The Mandalorian is one of the best shows on Disney+. But this is not The Mandalorian. Let me explain. For the most part, I thoroughly enjoyed Season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, but something just seems off with Season 3 so far. Just watch this scene.
I told you that was a bad idea.
Notice anything? In this scene where Mando hands Grogu the little silver ball, so much is said in such a little action. But in Season 3 Episode 2, he's constantly talking to Grogu in order to give information to the audience, which just doesn't work for his character. I mean, if you remember back to Season 1, what made his character so interesting was the fact that he talked very little and mainly expressed his emotions through actions. This breaks one of the core rules of film. Show, don't tell. And this leads me to another important lesson. Learn the rules before you break them. And this is something that really bugs me from an editing standpoint. Do you notice these classic wipe transitions they're using? Do you notice how often they're using them? Or, more importantly, why they're using them? Yeah, of course they're the classic Star Wars transitions, but they don't make sense here. In the original trilogy, they were always used to show a transition from one location to another, signifying the end of one scene and the start of the next. But in The Mandalorian, we have multiple of these transitions in the same scene. They don't show a change in tone, they don't signify the end of a scene, it's the same shot, same location, it's just the Mandalorian and Grogu exploring the mines of Mandalore. Now, I don't think this is entirely the editor's fault, they're probably just adding them in because they're told to. But I would hope the higher-ups would start to take into consideration when to use these transitions and when to not. I noticed this trend start to take place in the Book of Boba Fett, and I was really hoping this didn't become a new thing in every Star Wars TV show, but unfortunately, for the most part, it has. Next we have spectacle for the sake of spectacle. Now, this entire scene could have been cut out of the episode, but for now, let's overlook that fact and instead focus on how even if it did fit into the story, they still botched the payoff. And it's kind of unfortunate because the only key to unlocking this is one word: suspense. The way this scene plays out is very sudden, and it's still kind of unexpected when the sea monster shows up. The only thing it lacked for me was build-up. Even if the audience would probably pick up that something was going to happen, they wouldn't know exactly what. So it would have been way more impactful to have some build-up before the sea monster emerges. For example, look at Season 2, Episode 1. It's essentially the exact same scene, but it has that level of suspense that Season 3 is lacking. Before the creature shows up, we see this little windmill start to spin and some creatures scurry off. Chaos begins to unfold as the Mandalorian and Cobb Vanth try and figure out what's going on. And since they're just recycling old scenes and changing them up a bit in Season 3, there has to be something that's a little bit more impactful for the audience. So what if they did have this build-up? Would it make it any better? Well, I pieced together an edit from the footage I had available, and obviously this would be much better if I had more shots to choose from, but the general idea is still the same.
From this moment on, I shall never remove my helmet.
From this moment on, I shall never...
Okay, now I am going to go after this minor nitpick I have of... It just looks weird. I mean, like, couldn't they have just had him levitate slowly up? I mean, whenever else he uses the Force, he usually has to concentrate super hard and then usually passes out. Anyways, in conclusion, the only thing holding back The Mandalorian Season 3 is the use of recycled content without the knowledge of what made it good in the first place. After all, it's a bit ironic that the reason The Mandalorian Season 3 isn't that good is because it's trying to take ideas that were originally good in Star Wars. Okay, that's all for today. Click here if you want to see how I took 100 photos in 24 hours.